everybody? Welcome back to What's Going On. Thank you, Selahna, for coming back.
I love that you make it seem like I had to commute to get here.
It's a big commute in this.
All the way from the bedroom, guys.
All the way from the bedroom. All 4 steps.
For context, we live in a 1-bedroom.
And it's
we're
hard
not
to
like
get
those
out of
people.
bed, man.
We're not like those people in Texas that are living in like these 20-bedroom homes.
Oh, I hate, and I don't hate, but I do hate seeing people with their beautiful homes. It's like, I paid $500 rent, and you're like, we gotta move.
I understand why everyone left New York. I get it now.
It's like, we get it. But thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the people that are coming back to this What's Going On 2020 edition. The pandemic. We are still figuring out what the hell is going on. And thank you for the feedback. And we're going to tackle a topic that was brought up by I will say her name because she listened to it. She was very excited. She's like, oh my god, you guys are doing a podcast. And she's super supportive. I really appreciate her very much. So Natalia, who is a very big supporter of I guess life, she's just a positive person. She said, why don't you talk about the differences, the cultural differences between you and your wife? Because I'm Colombian and she's Canadian, even though she looks like any ethnicity, to be honest.
Santi looks super white, but this is.
When we went to Mexico for a honeymoon, people would speak to her in Spanish.
True.
And not me.
I have people speaking to me in such an array of languages in the streets.
You could be anything.
Like living in such a diverse place, whether it was Montreal or New York. I've had people come to speak to me in Italian, Greek, Spanish, and Arabic. And I'm just like... Sorry, I'm super white, lady.
Yeah, because you're a whitey, but somehow you have features that are interchangeable with all kinds of ethnicities.
It's the Italian roots.
It's the Italian thing is like once you're Italian, you're like even if you're 2%, it's like you're Italian 2%. You're pretty Italian to me. That's
I'm pretty Canadian. Let's be honest.
So you're as white as they come, and I mean that with all the love.
Thanks.
In this very political climate.
So are you.
But that's the thing. This is what ethnicity and culture is a very loaded term because I'm Colombian. I was born in Colombia, grew up in Colombia, but I look white.
No, but you are white. You don't look white. You are white.
Well, yeah. If we were to do the ancestry thing, I probably have. I mean, I do. I know for a fact I have German and Spanish from Spain. So it's
No, you're white.
I'm white, but I'm Colombian.
But you immigrated to a country. You immigrated to the United States and Canada from Colombia, and you were not an English speaker.
Exactly. I struggled with the English, and it was tough. I had to learn English from scratch. Shout out to Santi. And there's cultural differences. That was just for me. But you grew up in Montreal.
Born and raised, baby.
Born and raised.
But I think that you raise a good point because you're talking about like ethnicity, race. Like you have a pretty unique stance. Like everyone has a unique perspective of the world, right?
Yeah.
But in Colombia, you were white. So you were like this privileged white kid in Colombia, right? Like you weren't, you were seen as, oh my God, he's white. Didn't they call you Blanquito?
Yeah, mono. They call me Mono Blanquito in the coast.
So that's my point.
Yeah.
There was like a privilege that's associated with that.
Blancuco.
But
they told me Blancuco, which is very offensive.
Okay, well maybe don't say it on the podcast.
No. I mean, it's not offensive to anyone. It's offensive to me.
Okay. So so you in Colombia, you didn't experience like a prejudice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when you came here to the United States in particular, because you came to the U.S. first, right? You came to the United States. It was a language-based
barrier,
prejudice, not a skin-colored one.
No. It was never. I was never discriminated against because of how I looked. It was more how I spoke.
Yes.
And I guess on some level, that's why there's layers to this. And I really find it, I don't know, interesting to me that we really based like our race problems on 100% on the color of your skin, where there's way more to it than just that.
It's multifaceted. Nothing is ever like this or that. It's always like a mix of different things.
Yeah, and Colombia has its own race structure,
Yeah.
barriers. Regionally, there's a lot of things that they're behind in terms of. This one thing, like in the U.S. and Canada, because it's a land of immigrants.
Yeah.
Like you grew up. Your high school was you've told me several
Oh
times.
yeah, I mean, like I grew up around a lot of people that didn't look like me.
You were the minority in your high school.
I mean, maybe. But I'm saying, like, it wasn't important. Like, I never. In elementary school, my elementary school, as I remember it being, was extremely diverse, and like had all sorts of people from different backgrounds. Like, you'd had like second generation immigrant kids. You had kids that were super white. You had kids of different background, like just kids of different backgrounds.
Yeah.
But it was never told. Like, I was never told that was weird.
Yeah.
It was just my normal.
Yeah.
And I definitely grew up with my own perceptions based on my, who I'm a white woman, so I had like a white lens of looking at things. But I never saw someone that looked different than me and thought that they were weird. You know what I mean? And then by high school, it was just like my high school was extremely diverse as well. And I was lucky because my high school not only was it embraced its diversity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It really embraced it. And I'm not saying it embraced the diversity, and so to me it was just that was normal. That's how growing up in a very multicultural city, urban area, is a different experience of growing up in a place that's mainly one, like separated.
That's to me that's what's really interesting about places like Montreal, New York, where you're exposed to all these different cultures, right? Like, I don't know how many people really understand Colombian culture. I know you've been exposed to it 100% because of me, and it's interesting to you.
Yeah.
It's something like, oh, you guys, like Colombians, we have weird things. Like, for instance, my mom genuinely thinks that if you go out in the cold without a jacket or a coat, you're going to get a cold.
That's a good one to talk about, actually. That's a good one because we have had that discussion before where you have told me, like, because we'll go out. I'm from Canada, born and raised. All right, we spoke about this in the last episode. We all know this. It's if you don't go out when it's a little bit uncomfortable, you never go out. There's like 1 month you can go out. You know what I mean? So that's when you said, like, Santi used to be like, I can't go out. It's raining. I'm going to get sick. And I was like, Santi, like, chill. Like, to me, it's like, if you don't go out when the weather's a little iffy, you're not leaving your house ever.
So here's it, because
like the cold, it was more specifically cold and rain.
The cold and rain, because in Colombia there's this thing in Bogota where I grew up, el sereno, which means it's like that point in the day where it gets cold. Like between, like, because Bogota could be cold in the morning, then it warms up right in the afternoon, at noon, and then it kind of like 2-3 is like kind of nice, like 20 degrees Celsius. Sorry, Americans. 64, whatever you guys do. And then it would get cold again, and then that moment, like 5:30, 6 p.m., like parents in the neighborhood go crazy. It's like, no, get in because El Sereno is going to kill you. And we don't know if this is a real thing or just parents invented it so that kids go back home to get, to eat dinner. Like, we don't, to this day, I don't know if this is a legitimate, like, thing or it was just a way of parents to, like, get you inside, which I think it's hilarious.
I mean, they did that in Canada too. It was always like when the street lights go on, you got to get in the house. So in the summer, that's like 10 p.m., but in the winter, it's like 3 p.m. So by the time you're off the school bus, you got to get in your house.
All right, everybody in. But we haven't even no, and you can't do anything. It's dark outside.
I mean, that was one of my rules growing up.
Really?
When I was in Sec 1, which is the 7th grade, which is high school from where I'm from, I was like 13, and my dad's rule was, okay, you got to be home by dark, like before dark. And I was like, okay, that's great for like the spring and the fall and whatever. But like in the winter, my school got out at 3. I think it was 3:06. We got out of school. I had to just book it home.
Wow.
Because it would be dark by like 4.
That's too
So
funny.
I didn't.
That's exclusive for
And
Canadians.
then the second when I got when I was 14, he was kind of like, yeah, that's a little unreasonable. He was like, okay, if you come home and it's like 5 p.m. and dark, just make sure you travel with a buddy. That's was it. But it was kind of unreasonable to think like.
That's funny.
Yeah, because where are you gonna go? Like you basically can't have a life.
That's what's crazy about Canada. Canada is a wonderful, beautiful place, but the fact that winter is so harsh.
Yeah.
It makes it very, and this is where cultural differences really kick in.
Yeah, how was it as a Colombian? Because I know you moved to New York before you moved to Montreal, but how was it moving to like New York and then to Canada? Because I know that New York has a reputation in the U.S. of being like very cold. To me, but it's not as cold as Montreal.
Well, when I was a kid, it was definitely like cold was like that was winter. That was like, oh shit, you have to have gloves.
Yeah,
like you got to wear them, and I'm like, yeah, this is super cold. But then going to Canada was a different game, and I visited Canada a couple times before moving there, and I remember going to Quebec City.
Oh my God, that's
I remember going to Quebec City like during Christmas time, and I didn't have proper boots. Like I didn't have I had like I don't know regular Colombian shoes, and I was dying. I really thought that was, and then I would just see people like naturally just walking like, hey, howdy, comment ça va, because it's Quebec City, and then they're like, oh, ça va, and then they were just normal. They were just normal people having a good day when it's like minus 20 degrees, and here I am like, oh my God, like my feet are gonna like, it was so tough, and that is such a turnoff for people who like warmer climates.
Yeah, well, you're from. I mean, I know that people make fun of Bogota for being like a cold city. But it's still a lot warmer than Canada or New York.
When my brother-in-law went to Bogota for the first time, he's like, "Whoa, summertime, ooh, caliente," and we were like, "This is the coldest it's been for like."
He's also super white too.
Yeah, he's super white.
Like from Ontario.
That's the thing. Maybe this is why people think I'm so white, is because most of my closest people are the whitest people ever. I like that maybe.
But I think you need to like change the way you're saying, because you say like I'm white, but I'm not white. You're white, but you're also Colombian.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I need to. What would you recommend?
Just because someone's from Latin America doesn't mean they're white or not white.
Yeah,
they can be white or they can be non-white.
So would you label me as a white male?
Yes.
Interesting.
But you're not American, and well, you're Canadian now because you have your Canadian citizenship, but you're like. Your roots are from Colombia. You're Colombian.
Yeah.
But you're a white Colombian.
Yeah. It's true.
You don't have like in this country you don't get judged because of the color of your skin.
Got it. That makes sense. That actually makes sense.
The accent thing, but now you don't even have an accent anymore.
So
But I think this whole conversation, we could go down this. We could talk about this more, but we wanted to talk about in relation to our like relationship, like because I'm Canadian, you're from Colombia, we have different things that we like maybe clash on or have to like understand, because I know that there's been situations in the past that like like we went to we hung out with your family and I said no, I don't want a coffee, thank you.
Yeah.
And they kind of took at the beginning, like it was a long time ago, it was kind of seen as like, no, you need to take it. Like you kind of said, like no, you have to take the coffee.
Yeah, take the coffee.
It's rude if you don't take the coffee. But I was like, yeah, but I don't want to have something I don't want.
Yeah,
like that's not rude in my upbringing.
Yeah,
but for you, it's like you have to say, of course, this is a coffee.
It's a polite thing to like if you go to a Colombian household and you're doing la visita, right? Like the hang. The visita is the hang. This is just funny for me. If there's any Colombians watching this, they're like, please just subscribe. Yeah, if you're doing la visita and someone is like, hey, do you want like a coffee or whatever, hot chocolate with arepa or whatever?
You say yes.
You say yes. I mean, if you say no, it's like what a dick, you know, like how dare you?
But I think that's an important cultural difference that we don't talk about enough.
One thing is that Canadians too, they're very easygoing with feelings. You can like talk about your feelings openly.
I mean that might just be my family. Well, I think a lot of
but like I think I'm not Canadians, but Westernized.
Maybe like more.
It's easier to tell your parents like I'm just having a bad day. I'm depressed.
Well, we always make that joke of like when, we as like people from Canada, like, and I say Canadian, like, I say people that are super Canadian like me, like my family's been in Canada for generations. Like I don't even know how long they've been there.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're very westernized. They're very kind of like open-minded about a lot of things and kind of more like in that progressive, as we say, mindset of like, they let me go out. I didn't have the, whatever, stuff like that.
Colombians is like, it's really like to talk about certain topics is kind of like, and it didn't happen to me necessarily, but I like Colombian culture is very, if you are feeling down you don't want to do your homework, too bad, you're doing your homework.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It was the whole thing of like, Mom, Dad, I'm gonna take a year off school to find myself. And then Santi just laughs when I say that. Like I did take a couple years off school in between. I went to college and then I took 2 years off before going to university. So I did go to college, but like, we were laughing about all these like, Jennifer who goes and she's like, I want to take a year to find myself. And you're like, that is so Western, because you just like laughed in my face when I said that.
Yeah, because to me it's like, if I told my mom, I was like, hey Mom, I want to take a year to find myself, she'd be like, well, you can find yourself while you're doing calculus, advanced calculus.
Yeah, like here's a mirror.
Yeah, here's a mirror. You found yourself already. Look at that. That's good.
Actually, your mom said something really funny, and I wanted to bring it up because it made me laugh. Our cat, Aster, has been like not well. Like she hurt herself, and she's kind of sick, and she's being a big baby, and like she's kind of just like puking when she gets angry and shitting on the floor.
She has behavioral problems.
She's behaving a little off. Anyways, so we were kind of like trying to make, she was really not well, so we had to be careful about how we were feeding her, and like she kind of lost some weight, so we were trying to get her gain weight. Anyways, big long story. and Sandy's
let me summarize that.
Sandy's
she has attitude problems. Sometimes her leg doesn't work properly, so she
hurt herself. She actually hurt herself.
So,
but we were talking to your mom, and your mom was like, "You guys need to stop being such like
white
parents. You need to start bringing out. You need to start being immigrant parents with her. Don't pull up with her shit."
Yeah, that was funny. That was really funny. She's like, my mom was like, literally, she's like, "Está muy consentida, Santiago. Tiene que déjela." It's like she's too rotten. Like, come on, let it be. She's a cat. Which is true, because now this is my state of mind with Aster, and this is how I know I've whiteificated, like become more white, I guess, because like in the middle of the night I hear anything and I'm like, oh my god, she's gonna take a dump in the middle of it. Like I gotta go. I gotta get her to the litter. Trained. Yeah, like it's not okay. She I love her. She's right here. And if you could, yeah, there you go. All right, what's that, baby? I'm so weak now. And I'm not saying, hey, white parents, power to you, man. You have such a different approach to like, oh my God, he's just having a rough day. I'm gonna give it like a double candy treat for. It's amazing. Like I didn't have that. To me, it was just like, well, you're having a bad day. We'll figure it out. Kind of like I gotta work again because I gotta pay rent. Kind of like that. To me, was like that big difference that. Feelings are important, and kind of like, oh my God, life is so unjust, and I just want to really do something nice. And immigrant parents are like, if you're an immigrant, you're like, I just gotta have a good job so that I can provide for people that I care about. Yeah. It's such a different mentality.
Yeah, because I mean, like you were a first generation immigrant. You have
I'm fresh off the boat.
The other thing too is important to note in like your upbringing versus like maybe mine is you were kind of like you wanted to go into theater, and your family was like, okay, but you also need to go into something that's
like I remember getting really into acting at Bishop's University. Shout out to Bishop's. And I remember having a conversation with my mom, and it was kind of like, sure, you can do it, but after you get the real degree.
I mean, and honestly, like I think that like the problem with the arts is they are really underappreciated. But it's right, like it's true. It's like that whole that immigrant stereotype. You had that experience.
Yeah,
it's a stereotype for a reason. Like you had the experience of like your family being like, you got to get a degree that's gonna get you employed after, and you did.
Yeah.
Whereas like me, and I don't know, it could have just been my parents or my dad in specific. He was an artist, so he kind of was like, who cares about math? Just do well in theater class. Yeah. And like that was my whole experience. But yeah, I mean that was super like a very different way.
And this brings me to something that's very fundamental to this episode, and it is. I genuinely believe that a balance between an immigrant parenting and white parenting is the best approach.
Yeah. Well, the thing we do have in common is our parents did give us freedom. They trusted us.
My mom trusted me entirely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to get this far without my mom and my sister and people close to me being so trusting to my choices, and they really, really, they weren't like the typical like, you have to marry a Colombian girl because then this podcast would be in Spanish.
I look Colombian.
Yeah, you could play the part, but they were never judgmental. They were very trusting. They were really loving, but that's part of the transition from that hardcore Colombian to a much more liberal approach.
And I also think that I like. We talk a bit more about you because I'm kind of not as interesting in this regards. I'm just like, I'm an immigrant. I mean, technically.
Stop it. You're just as fascinating as me.
Listen, shush.
Okay.
Listen, I'm an immigrant in the United States.
That's a joke. And you are an immigrant. So
I am in this country. I had to immigrate to get here.
You're a Mexican, according to Donald Trump.
I am a snow Mexican. No, I'm a Canadian. I'm an immigrant. I had to immigrate to this country, and it was But what I was going to say is in our relationship, the thing that has worked out for us, because you have Colombian cultural values, but you came to North America when you were young enough to understand both sides.
Yeah.
So you kind of have like bridged the Colombian with the, I'm going to say North America, like American / Canada.
With the U.S.
The U.S.-Canada kind of thing. And you are pretty good at bridging the gap.
Yeah.
So, like, yes, you have things like you get weird. You're like, if I go out in the cold, I'm going to get sick. But, like, you're also,
which I still believe is true.
I think you just do that to try to, like, not go to work. Doesn't matter anymore.
Doesn't matter anymore. I know I'm with you. And I think that it really depends on how early in your life you're exposed to the different values. And
you're also forced to assimilate, though.
I was to me it was just 100% about you assimilate or you get bullied and you don't participate. Like that was to me the biggest lesson, right? And when you're born in the country and you grew up in that bubble, you don't really see that other picture, the other side. That's sort of for me right now. It's an interesting, from a domestic standpoint. Like we've been able to achieve that. Like when I say something outlandish, you're like, what? If you eat watermelon and you drink beer, you will die. Like
I think you genuinely believe that.
I can't do that. And it originated from something my mom said to me very early in my life, which is like, you don't drink and eat watermelon because you get intoxicated.
Meanwhile, I was over here at like college parties, like eating like watermelon, like vodka soaked watermelon.
Oh my God.
It actually happened once. I did drink vodka's watermelon. I didn't drink it. I ate the watermelon and I was just sitting there the whole night. I got up at the end of the night. I like could not see my hands. Like I was like, what? I didn't realize how much alcohol was in that.
So there you go. So there's things like that I to this day I'm still like, I don't know. I'm going to take my chances with my Colombian side, but I do have this different perspective than many other of my fellow Colombians.
Have you ever felt like a weird moment between us where you think we didn't understand each other because of cultural differences?
Not. I mean, like maybe I can't think of this specific moment, but there's been definitely things that you probably have said or done that I'm like, well.
Maybe because I think that the other thing that is highlighted is I'm more likely, and might just be my family, but we're more inclined to kind of say what the heck we want to say.
That's to me being the biggest.
Yeah, because I'm that person, like I'm unfiltered. That reminds me, I'm very unfiltered.
Yeah.
So like I say things and I don't care. Like I'll just tell it how it is.
Yeah.
And you weren't used to that.
No, not at all. I'm more of a. But that could
also be a religious thing because you were raised with religion and I
was raised Catholic. Yeah. But yeah, probably. I think
there's
right.
there's a lot of layers because you were like from Colombia, but you were also raised in a very Catholic way. And like I was baptized, but I was never raised with religion. Like it was never put upon me as something I had to do.
Because that's one thing about South Americans, and most of our families are incredibly Catholic. or whatever other religion, Jewish, Muslim, whatever. And it's very like religion is a big part of the South American life.
And it is here for, I think, for some people. And
Yeah.
But I was not raised in a way that it was told. Like, I was not forced to participate. I was given the option to, yeah. And like I wouldn't be, no matter what.
Oh man, I would have loved it. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would have loved it if my mom, when I was 10, be like, "Do you want to go to church or do you want to play video games?" Mom, I love you. I want to play video games. Okay, I'll see you after church. That to me would have changed everything. I don't think I would have ever done comedy. I would have been just a happy dude. Or like I have the ability to choose.
Meanwhile, like my mom tried to put me in Sunday school. We got baptized basically so my mom could marry my stepdad in the church. Like that was, and it's fine. Like when I'm happy for her, but that's I got baptized. I was like 8 years old or 7 years old. Like I was old to get baptized, and it's fine. It didn't really like. I went through the steps, but I would get like so annoyed because I had to do I called it Jesus homework. And I would come home and I'd be like, I don't want to do this. Why do I have to do Jesus homework? I already have regular homework. Like, I already hated homework. When I was a kid, I hated homework. So I didn't want to do my Jesus homework. And I would just go to the Jesus classes, as I called them, my Sunday school. And whoever was teaching it would be like, Selahna, so, like, what are the 10 commandments? And I'd just be like, I don't know. And they'd be like, did you read your quote? And I was like, no, I don't care. And it was so bad. Like, listen, if you are religious, I would totally respect you. Like, I don't have any hate in my heart towards people that practice a religion in a way that is truthful, honest, and I think that it is a tool, I don't judge people that practice religion. And I think that, religion can be a beautiful thing. But I, as a child, did not understand it. And I think that's a big difference in our upbringing and maybe in some of, our tendencies because, there's, I think that your household, which was more religious, was more kind of it was more like between you and your God. Yeah,
there are certain topics that you don't talk about, or you don't really, you're kind of move on.
Yeah, that's
it's not
another cultural thing.
And but my mom was open with the thing about I have to be honest is that my mom had an incredible learning curve with me because she was a single parent. And she definitely went from being extremely very conservative, she was extremely cautious to, I think by the time I was 15, she was like, okay, I trust you. I know you're going to have sex. Here are a couple condoms. Don't get anyone knocked up. And I'm like, wow, what was the turning point here?
And I think the big difference between our upbringing is okay, you grew up in an entirely different culture. Like it was Latin. You grew up in South America. Yeah. A completely different part of the world than me. And you grew up with religion, whereas I didn't. Yeah. And you grew up we had different upbringings in those regards. Yeah. And I think that plays into the cultural differences. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you have these. I think that's a big factor. Yeah. And I like what you said because your mom had I like what you said about the fact that there was an evolution. But I mean, with us, that's what I think I think that works well for us is that I also think I understand you. Yeah. Do I know what it's like to be an immigrant or to live in another country that's not Canada and now the United States? No, I don't know what that's like. But I think you have to be willing. If you're going to be with somebody, this is my takeaway. If you're going to be with somebody that comes from a different background than you, you need to be understanding and you need to be willing to learn some things. We're going to disagree sometimes. Honestly, 70% of our disagreements or misunderstandings are because of there's a cultural divide. Yeah. And that's what I said about the coffee thing. We had a misunderstanding once because I said I didn't want to do something and you thought that was rude. Yeah. But it wasn't me being rude. It was me just being who I am I'm used to speaking
the simple ability of freedom of choice.
I do. I express myself and I'm very, as I said, unfiltered. And you took it as rude, but only because in the cultural sense it was. Yeah. But in where I'm from, that was never seen as rude. I understand. So I think some of our misunderstandings have been that. So as a person that is Canadian, born and raised, who ended up with somebody who is not Canadian, not American. Yeah. It was
despite what many people may think about me.
It was important for me to know that I had to make an effort So I don't want to like toot my own horn, as they say. Like, I don't want to be like, I'm so great. But like, before I even we were together, I was taking classes that were, my whole program in college were about North-South studies, which was the relationship between North and South America. So we did a lot of learning about, Latin American history, Latin American politics. We went to an integrative seminar in Central America. So I learned and I heard from people that came from those worlds, like different countries, of course. But I learned, I heard people speak that came from a different country as me, that had different upbringing, that had a different, who were immigrants or non-immigrants living somewhere in Central or South America. Or I was learning Spanish. I think one of my Spanish teachers was actually from Colombia.
Really?
I was exposed to that. And then we started dating and I'd already had that education. Now, of course, academics, you can't learn exactly the experience of it, but I think it made me aware of more of where you came from. I didn't know much about Colombia per se, but I understood something.
Yeah, you
and
knew
it was more
coffee.
I knew that I had to be understanding. I knew that I had things to learn. I think that's what it taught me. And then I actively have taken classes at school that were focused on Latin America, or I took Spanish classes because I need to communicate with your mom, who speaks, like, she probably understands English better than she speaks it, and that's how I am in Spanish. I understand it much better than I actually express myself. But I think it's important to take steps when you're with somebody from a different culture or background or have language differences. You need to take the effort to learn about it. Like, you learned English, so it wasn't really a question for us. You already knew English. But me learning Spanish has just allowed me to kind of go more in depth into that relationship, and wanting to learn about Colombian cultures and wanting to be open and not, I think that's important.
It's very important, and thank you for saying those things. And to wrap it up and to really kind of like put things in perspective and kind of give a bottom line and a conclusion to the episode is, I have struggled, like I personally have had a lot of issues and struggled with identity. I really have, because I'm Colombian, born and raised, moved to North America very young. Was forced to assimilate, and to me it's always been a question of, what am I? What label do you put on me? And I always wanted to be white, and I wanted to be
like white in the sense of like North
American, so that I could like Canadian white. That's what I meant. When I say white, I don't mean Colombian white. I mean like North American NAFTA white, taking out Mexico. I mean that. So to me, that was like, the biggest identity crisis till I was like 27. Honestly, genuinely, like very like late in my 20s. And I think that when we started dating, and once I started to seriously let a person like you get to know me, I became way more proud of who I was, and it helped me a ton in gaining that confidence of, you don't have to put a label on anyone or on things. If you get to know someone and you genuinely care about that other person and you do your research, there's wiggle room for common ground. Whether there is religious differences, cultural, whatever it is, if you truly get to know another person to the degree that we're married, there's a point of agreement.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily agreement, but understanding. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's helped us a ton. And I think that that's something that, if you're out there in a mixed couple, is that or like a interracial relationship?
Yeah, whether you're
intercultural. This wouldn't be interracial. This would be intercultural.
Yeah.
So maybe this can help you. And
I think a big thing is like have conversations, like be willing to learn about each other. I mean, as I said, it was more, I think in this case, me learning about you than you learning about me, because you had lived in Montreal for so long.
Yeah.
Like you lived there for a significant amount of time. You kind of understood what it was like to grow up, to be Canadian. To be Canadian. So it was less of you having to learn. I mean, you did have to learn things about me in sense of like how I'm just unfiltered, and I kind of just like say what I mean and mean what I say.
Yeah.
But I had to actively and it didn't feel like a task. It didn't feel like a burden or something I had to do. It was a choice. If I was like, if I'm gonna fully be a part of this relationship, I have to understand where you're coming from and where your family's coming from. And likewise for me, my family, like our families are such diverse people. Like there's so many different personalities anyway. So like, I think it's just a matter of understanding, be willing to learn something and just be accepting of other people's point of views. Like I'm never gonna change your mom's mind about the rain giving someone a cold. I just let it go, and that's
She'll
it.
just say like, esa no sabe lo que está hablando. No sabe lo que está hablando. I'm gonna put the subtitles. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Selahna, for being here. Next time we'll talk about more racial or By the way, I'm so proud, and to say the last thing, we didn't talk about COVID-19.
Well, now you just brought it up. Okay, on that note, we're going to go because before you know it, Santi's going to start talking about COVID-19 and we don't want to hear it. So I'm gonna close this out. Thank you for listening. If you have any suggestions or something you would like to hear, let us know. And we will do our best to find something to talk about.
Right on. Thank you, Selahna. We'll see you guys next week.
Make love, not war.
Woo!